the first thing I want you to think about a little bit is what kind of things are causing you stress right now or in general. I have some suggestions there, but go ahead and post in the chat. What kind of things are you noticing in your own life? Nothing? No one has any stressors right now? Time in class. Okay, time in class, midterms, right? Class and readings for Jake. Very good. Appreciate the honesty. Anybody else? Time management. All right. Good. And let's do 30 more seconds, then we'll move forward. Okay. Well, any and all of these things could be stressors for you. And these are typically the kind of things I hear from students in combination or singly. I think sometimes it's helpful to know that you're not alone in that regard. There's a lot of research recently on rates of depression and anxiety among college students. One that was done a couple of years ago suggested that 60% of all students had at least one symptom of a mental health condition, and that was 50% greater than the rate was 10 years ago, the last time they measured it. That was partly influenced by the pandemic. Obviously, that caused a lot of stress for many people, students and non-students, but the trend really started long before 2020. So I don't think that we can ascribe it just to that. And of course, COVID has increased that. 44% of students reported they had some stress or anxiety or loneliness as their biggest challenge right now, even more so than the rigors of being a student. So question is, why is that? There are some obvious answers related to the transition to college. For students who are what we call traditional age, meaning somewhere in the 18 to 24-year-old age bracket, many times going to college involves leaving home. For international students, it may involve leaving a home country and going to a new culture. For a lot of us, it was a time of experiencing far greater freedom. I used to call it the Ferris Bueller's dilemma. Every day you wake up and you have to decide, am I going to go to class or am I not? And you're probably also experiencing much higher expectations from your instructors. Most students find college far more challenging than high school. And then finally, a lot of you are going to be treated as adults for the first time. That was certainly true for me when I was a freshman in college. I had an instructor named Ann Embry as my English instructor freshman year. She was the first person to ever talk to me like anything other than an idiot. And in fairness, I often was an idiot. But having that adult viewpoint on things really helped me to mature. It takes time, obviously, but college is often a time when that starts to occur. Something else to think about is that college tends to present us with a really high level of stress, particularly later in the semester. I used to call the academic calendar a crescendo of stress, where it gets harder and harder as the semester goes on. And of course, it culminates with midterms and final exams where you have tests or papers due in almost every class. Our bodies and our minds are not necessarily ideally attuned to that, though. There's something called the Yerkes-Dodson law of arousal, which states that typically people want something in the middle in terms of their stress level. If there's too little stress, it's here on the left side of the class, we're bored, we're asleep, we're not stimulated. We're more concerned with the right side of the graph, where we end up in a disorganized or an anxious state as a result of stress. And I'm going to hand it off to Jake now to talk a little bit about some of the symptoms of depression and anxiety.
Yeah, thank you, David. So here's a pretty good list of maybe symptoms, or maybe just kind of red flags or warning signs that something is going on that you want to pay attention to. I think one of my responses to seeing this list is to realize how common a lot of them look, right? I think something that's really important with college wellness that we talk about a lot, is trying to remove some of the stigma from these ideas that it is not a bad thing to feel anxious, to feel depressed. It is not anything that you are alone with. Plenty of people struggle with it, especially in a high stress environment, which you are all in at some times. And of course, all of us will at some point have difficulty with schoolwork, or maybe, lose some of our interest in things, or, feel panicked or overwhelmed when a midterm's coming up, or whatever it happens to be. So, as you look through this list, just think, am I feeling these things, and are they starting to interfere with my ability to kind of live my life the way I want? Are they getting in the way of my schoolwork, of my life outside of school? Are they really causing me a lot of distress? And then as we get, lower on the list, then I think it starts really getting serious, where you really might want to start thinking more about getting help. That if you're feeling a lot of no energy, having trouble getting motivated at all, or having thoughts of suicide or harming yourself in some way, that's the kind of thing that could indicate some depression and anxiety, but definitely indicates that that's something that you could seek help for, and that you should get support for, because that's something to take really seriously. So just kind of, when I look at this list, just thinking about when I have these feelings, and am I stressed because I have a test tomorrow, or have I been stressed for 2 weeks straight? And maybe it's time to start thinking that I want to try to find some help with that.
Okay, I want to spend a good portion of the workshop today with you on a couple of techniques to help with stress management in the moment. And these come from a researcher named Paul Nolting, who focuses on stress management with students. And I'm going to ask you to just play along with me a little bit. We're going to do a couple of these together. I'll trust you that you're doing them on your own in your house, because I can't see most of you. The first one is a mindfulness meditation technique, where your focus is strictly on your breathing, and you're trying to push all of the thoughts out of your mind. So I'm going to ask everyone, wherever you are, to sit up straight in your chair or your couch. And I'm going to suggest that you look away from the screen. You can look somewhere else in the room, like at the wall or up at the ceiling. You look down, you may close your eyes, whatever's most relaxing for you. And as you're doing this, I'm going to ask you to breathe in through your nose if you can. And then as you exhale, you're going to think quietly 1. You're going to inhale again. Count 2 as you exhale. And keep doing that until you get up to 4. And when you reach 4, go back to 1 and start counting again. And if you're like me, your mind is going to start to wander a little bit. You're going to have other things intrude. Your job there is not to judge yourself or critique yourself. It's just to gently but firmly try to push those thoughts out of your mind and take your thinking back to your breathing. And let's do this for about 1 minute. Okay, and open your eyes or come on back to the screen if you were staring someplace else. And I'm going to ask you to either put up in the chat or just speak it out if you want to, how that experience was for you. Some people find it very relaxing. Some find it the longest minute of their lives. Some are somewhere in between, struggling with keeping their thoughts at bay. What did you all think?
I found out that my attention goes away. So I just focus on how I breathe, and all what I'm worrying about just goes away. It feels fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you're right. Many
Okay.
people find that their attention kind of comes in and out and they have to refocus themselves frequently. And that's okay. That's part of what you're doing and practicing.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
It feels like I'm focused and I'm more focused.
Good. More focused. Excellent. Anyone else? See a couple.
David, I was
comments.
just going to throw in that there are so many wonderful free apps that'll do this for you, and there'll be a very simple visual and maybe with some numbers that will just guide you in breathing. And you can pull that out at any time. Sometimes I don't know. I wouldn't say I do it during class, but yeah, it's great because you can have it right on your phone or your computer or whatever, and have a guided meditation moment.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, I neglected to mention in this presentation, but I'm going to put it here in the chat. There is a free app to students called Wise at Work, which has a lot of these guided meditations, far better than the one I just facilitated. You can have access to that and use them as many times as you wish. And I use them actually frequently, and I think they're by and large very good, but they have a variety of different facilitators. So you can try to find one that fits with your style. I also wanted to mention that there's quite a bit of research about mindfulness and stress management, and there's a lot of information that suggests it's extremely helpful. Even doing as little as 5 minutes a day can have a measurable difference. And many people with disabilities find that it's actually almost as effective as medication. So if you are finding that you're having trouble with stress management, I'd really encourage you to try to just create a practice of this every day, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. Set a time for yourself in the day. I usually do it first thing in the morning when there's nothing else going on, and try to practice that breathing and that focus technique. And I think you'll find that within a couple of weeks, you may notice a difference and a change and improvement in your ability to manage stress in the moment. It's also helpful if you're doing something really stressful at the time, like you have a test coming up, although I think it works better if you're more in practice. All right, let's try one or two more and move on. Second one is a muscle relaxation technique. There's a couple different varieties. I'll show you 2 or 3 of them. The first one is just simple shoulder shrugs or rolls. So you're going to roll your shoulders towards your ears and then down. And you can just go straight up and down, or you can do circles with them, forward and backward. This I find very useful if I'm, say, sitting in the lobby waiting for a job interview, or even if I'm standing in line at the supermarket and I'm feeling irritated with the person in front of me who's taking much too long or talking to the teller incessantly. It's a good way to remind my body to let it go and just focus on the moment at the time. Another one that I've occasionally used, again, it's a chair exercise. So if you're in a chair, try to sit up fairly straight, reach down underneath your chair. And I want you to imagine that you're on a roller coaster and you're a little worried about falling out, and you're going to hold on to the bottom of your chair for just a moment. And imagine you're going up that steep incline at the start of the roller coaster and then go whooshing down it, and you can finally relax and let go. And then you look ahead and you see a couple of those loop-de-loops. So again, you grab the bottom of your chair and you hold on tight and you count the first loop-de-loop and the second loop-de-loop and the third one. And then you exhale and let go. And then you look and you go, oh, I forgot about the corkscrew. I got to get through that. So you grab one more time, bottom of the chair, hold tight, 1 corkscrew, 2 corkscrew, 3. I hate those because my head bangs back and forth, and relax, let go. Finally, we're decelerating. We're at the end of this ride. Both of those are techniques that are designed specifically to try to relax the muscles around your neck and shoulders, which is where a lot of people tend to hold stress, particularly at intense moments. And again, there are things that you can do in the supermarket or in class, and nobody even has to know what you're up to. A third technique that's really helpful for people who have sort of a negative dialogue going in their head is what we call positive self-talk. And this can take a whole lot of different forms, but what you want to do is essentially pump yourself up and convince yourself that you're well prepared for whatever it is that you're about to face. When I was a student, I used to tell myself things like, you studied hard, you know the material, you're going to do fine. All you have to do is tell them what you know. Same thing with job interviews. I would anticipate these are the questions they're going to ask. I already know what I want to say. I think I'm really well prepared. And it's a really good way to try to get yourself in a positive frame of mind, particularly if you're someone who's prone to stress in that particular moment. A related but slightly different technique is visualization. And I'm going to appeal to the skiers in the room, if there are any, or to anybody who's ever watched Olympic or professional skiing. Sometimes you'll see with downhill skiers is they'll get into the starting gate and they'll be standing there all hunched over waiting for the start, and you'll see them sort of bobbing back and forth and weaving around. And what they're actually doing is they're visualizing and imagining themselves going down the course. Presumably they already know what they're supposed to do. And that mental practice is preparing them for what's coming. What you want to avoid is the opposite of that, what I call the skiing into the tree phenomenon. So again, I'm going to ask you to imagine you're on your skis, you're standing at the top of the hill, you're looking down, right in the middle of the downhill is a giant tree. You're thinking, okay, I'm fine as long as I don't run into the tree. Question is, where should you be looking and focusing? Anybody? Any skiers? The answer is you should look at anything but the tree. If you look at the tree, guess where the skis are going? They're going straight into the tree. Same thing happens on a test, a job interview, a first date. Don't look at failure, because that's probably where your skis are going to take you. Try to look towards success and positivity. If you're like me, that works only so far. You're still going to have some negative thoughts creep in from time to time. That's okay. That's very normal. Much like with the meditation, you're going to try to be gentle but firm and just push them out of the way and return to the positive thinking techniques of the relaxation techniques that we talked about. And finally, a couple of more techniques that I picked up in mindfulness and meditation classes. These are visualization techniques, and there's two images I want you to try to utilize. The first one is that you're sitting on some grass right next to a mountain stream, and you're watching things that are drifting along it, say maybe some leaves or some debris, could be a plastic bag or something natural. And you're just watching it float by, and you're not getting involved with it emotionally. It's just happening external to you. And you want to try to imagine that your cares and concerns are just like that. You're letting them float by on that stream, but they're not directly pulling you in or involving you. If you prefer something a little more industrial, you can imagine the same thing as if you're standing at the side of a train tracks and watching a train roll by, and that those train cars are carrying away all your cares and concerns with them. The Wise at Work has a much better, more interactive version of that meditation if you're interested. But I always like those two images because I thought they really kind of captured what you're trying to do with these relaxation techniques. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm starting to get a little dry in the throat, and I'm going to let anybody who has questions or comments ask or post them now, and then we can move on in a minute.
One question.
Go ahead.
So like, your big point is like looking at a tree and focusing on the back.
You like the tree?
Well, no.
Okay, let's move forward. All right, so let's talk about some generic good habits for reducing stress, both inside and outside of class contexts. The first one is regular exercise, whether you're at home or outdoors. Now that we're back in person at school, you can also take a class with the college, such as yoga, which is generally far cheaper than a gym membership, and you probably learn a little bit more along the way. Again, there's been quite a bit of research that shows that exercise is a really effective means of stress management, and it doesn't have to be real high intensity. It can be just going out for a walk. Sleeping well is also a really important element of stress management. Most people need 7 to 8 hours a night. It does vary a little bit, but particularly if you're someone who has trouble sleeping, it's really helpful to try to set a routine in terms of what time you go to bed each night and when you wake up each morning. That will help to stabilize and normalize your sleep habits. For everyone, but particularly students, you want to avoid excessive use of alcohol, caffeine, drugs, recreational and otherwise, all of which can interfere with your sleep. And particularly you want to avoid caffeine shortly before bed. And I know it's really challenging because these things are seductive, but any electronic devices are much more likely to interfere with your sleep patterns, whether they're phones or tablets or TVs. So try to put them away 1 hour before you're planning to go to sleep and never use them in bed. We already talked briefly about meditation, which can be effective with as little as 5 minutes a day. Good study habits like going to tutoring, seeing your instructor during office hours, and then using some of the off-campus resources we're going to describe in a little bit can also help you with stress management. And we'll do a time management exercise together in a moment, so I won't give that away yet. Any questions before I move forward? Okay, let's keep going. So I'm going to have you do a little exercise for me. Grab a scrap of paper somewhere and a pen or pencil. And we're going to try to figure out how busy you are. So on that piece of paper, for number 1, first line, you're going to write how many hours a week roughly that you are in class. You can guess 10, 15, 20. And just below that, on the second line, I want you to take that number and multiply by 2. That's the number of hours that most instructors expect you to spend on studying. So for example, if you're in class 15 hours a week, they want you to study for 30 hours a week. On line 3, if you have a job, please put how many hours a week you typically work there. Line 4, not as big of a factor now that many people are taking classes online, but if you're commuting back and forth to school or to work, try to put how many hours you're committing to commuting each week. And then below that, a line for sports, clubs, activities. Below that, if you have any childcare obligations or family obligations, if you're looking after your parents or your siblings. And then the last line, if you have anything else that I haven't mentioned that's a regular occurrence. And when you've done that, try to add them all up and tell me how many hours a week you have committed to regular activities. You can put it in the chat or you can shout it out. $80. Wow, that's pretty high. It's 12 hours a day, every day. Pretty impressive. Anyone else?
That is crazy to think, though.
Yeah, that's a lot to think about.
Yeah,
Doesn't leave a lot of free time.
not really.
Anybody else? It's not a competition, by the way. You don't have to exceed 80. 60, 70 is plenty by itself. Okay, 45. That's better. Anyone else want to share? All right, if I'm being honest, I'm probably in the 60-hour range, which is not ideal. And most of that is Monday through Friday. So on the weekends, I try to give myself a break. I try not to be too goal-oriented and too scheduled. And I also typically give myself one day where I minimize my screen time because I spend so much time at work doing emails and Zoom meetings. And I would encourage you to try to do the same. Try to give yourself at least one day a week where you're not studying, working, or otherwise involved and engaged all the time. All right, let's talk about some techniques to help you a little bit with your time management skills, particularly in a school setting. try to find some sort of organization system that works well for you, whether it's a calendar or a planner. It can be paper-based or online. Some place to write down all of your assignments and due dates. For some people that induces stress, but I think for most people it helps them to plan ahead and look ahead. Again, when I was an undergraduate, I'd write all my big assignments and tests down so I could see if I had several things coming all in the same week and prepare ahead of time. Another option is to take a college success class like Counseling 120. Counseling 120 is actually transferable to four-year schools, so it's going to help you in your education as well. We talked briefly before about our expectations in terms of your in-class and out-of-class study time. Try not to overbook if you can avoid it. Again, calculate 2 hours a week of homework for every hour that you're in class. I know students do it, but it's really challenging to try to go to school full-time and to work full-time at the same moment. And lastly, I really discourage students from trying to take too many units. For most people, 15, I'd say, is the max. And for some, if you have a lot of other responsibilities, or if, like my students, you have a disability, that may be too many. Maybe 9 to 12 is more realistic for you. What I typically tell students is I'd much rather that you passed 3 classes and enjoyed them as that you struggled and failed in 4 or 5 classes and hated every moment of it. All right, technique number 4, try to monitor your grades within each class. Many instructors now post grades on Canvas so you can keep tabs on how you're doing. And if you're struggling at all, try to seek help early in the semester. Now is actually a really perfect time. It's week 5, which means you've typically had at least 1 test or paper or something so that you have a sense of how you're doing. If you're not doing well or if you're struggling, now is the good time to go see a tutor, see your instructor during office hours, set up a study group. Most importantly, try to be proactive about your work. When I was an English instructor and I assigned an essay, my assumption was that students would spend a week to 2 weeks working on it, not working on it the night before. Not only did it produce better essays, but it also lowered the stress level and it allowed people to work a little bit more gradually, a bit at a time. Contrary to that, I strongly discourage cramming, not only because I don't think it results in good grades, but it tends to increase stress and to decrease productivity. If any of you have ever had the experience of walking into a test and going completely blank, that's usually a stress response. It's not that you literally forgot everything, it's just that you can't get access to the information because your stress level is so high. Particularly, I discourage students from trying to cram right up to the minute before the exam. I'd often see people sitting right outside the classroom 5 minutes before class, reviewing their notes or asking their friends for information. To be honest, at that point, it's probably too late. If you don't know it or remember it, then you're not going to get it all crammed in the last 5 minutes. It's more helpful that you try to find something relaxing like meditation or music or just chatting with a friend, so that you go into the test as relaxed as possible. And then the last one is a bit of a longer conversation, but if you find that you have anxiety specific to one subject, math is the most common one, it's often helpful to try to identify what the origin of that was. Again, I used to teach a support class for students with disabilities who had great difficulty in math. And I would ask them early in the class, do you remember the first time you experienced math anxiety or what you think caused it? And typically anywhere from a third to a half of them could tell me not only what time it was, what age they were, but who it was. They'd say it was Mr. Rickrack, my 5th grade math teacher who used to walk around with a ruler and slap the desk with it. Or it was my 3rd grade instructor who made us stand in front of the board and embarrassed us if we didn't know the answer. A few people would even say it was my dad who used to hit me if I didn't know the answer when I was doing my homework. And just identifying what that origin was will sometimes help students to start to overcome that anxiety.
Yeah, David, I would put in a plug and say that's a great thing you can explore in counseling as well.
Agreed.
Talking about some of the origins of these stressors and how they're impacting you today.
Okay, I'm not going to read this to you. I'll let you have a minute or two to review it yourself. Most of these we've already talked to you about before. Any questions or comments before I move forward?
Do you have no.
No, nothing. Okay, I'm going to hand things over to Jake now. He's going to tell you a little bit about some resources on and off campus to get support with mental health if you feel like you need it.
Yeah, thanks, David. As I said, I'm from the Wright Institute, which is based in Berkeley. So I'm kind of a guest on your campus, but I can tell you just how much support I see that there is for students. And I think that's really wonderful. So this is just my encouragement to really reach out and make use of it, because there are a whole lot of people who would like to help you succeed and help you, deal with your stress if you have it, and help with your mental health. So some of those are, of course, you have DSS, the Disability Support Services, which works if you're registered with the office, like it says, and can help you with any range of mental health struggles that you might be having. You can reach out on their website. They have groups that meet, their mindfulness groups. And I know at San Ramon, they also do like walking groups every now and then, maybe even weekly, where you can just walk with your peers and with a leader and just walk around the beautiful campuses that you have. And then there are crisis counselors. If you're having a moment of crisis, if you feel totally overwhelmed or, even in danger, and you feel like you just have to talk to someone, getting over a cold, you can drop in to the counseling center and ask for a crisis counselor, and someone will speak to you then. DVC also has access to Timely Care, Timely MD, which is a great 24/7 kind of like drop-in service. And you do have to register for it, and it can be a little intimidating because it's just like the paperwork on the front end, but then it can connect you with someone to talk to on your phone or on a tablet or whatever, and they can help you at sort of set up according to what your needs are. So if it's anxiety or stress or depression, or I think even physical illness, if you like are having a cold or whatever, I think Timely Care can help with that. So that's a great thing to sign up for. It's free for DVC students. And then wellness counseling, that's my particular role, and my little corner at DVC is my colleagues and I provide brief counseling or therapy, either whatever term feels right to you is how we refer to it, but it's up to 10 sessions. And we meet for an hour or a little less than an hour weekly, typically, and people can meet on Zoom or in person. And we're all students ourselves, but we're students at the Wright Institute. So we're learning to become psychologists. We're being supervised by a psychologist, of course, who has her license. So we're in training, but we have really great support. And I think our most important job is really to listen to what you're going through and to try to support you as best as you can. And we can try to help connect you to some of these resources if you need it. But also, we really just want to be there, really. I mean, to put it very simply, to be there and to listen and to help support you and help you work through what you're dealing with, and maybe help you put some words to what you're struggling with and help you think of strategies to get through it. So you can sign up for that online, and sometimes there's a wait list, but you can sign up no matter what you're going through. We don't turn anyone away. So if you feel like you want to talk to someone, then I would encourage you, and I'm biased because I'm part of it, but I would really encourage you to sign up, because we are there and we love working with all of you, and we would be happy to help you. And then off campus, there are tons and tons of resources. Google is a great way to find some resources. There are numbers like 988, which is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, but there's also other things you have listed here, like the Disaster Distress Hotline is a really great resource that can be, a disaster, like, for instance, an earthquake, like we've been seeing in the news, all kinds of disasters, but things like that, those are special crisis counselors for that. It can be a natural disaster. It can be a human-made disaster. can be for COVID-19. So you can call that number that's listed there. The crisis text line. Some folks aren't ready to talk on the phone and they would rather text. So there's a number right there, 741-741. You can talk to a trained counselor who can help, again, connect you to resources or just help you through a really difficult moment. If you feel like you need, sometimes the word we use is stabilization. If you just need to kind of feel grounded again, you're just a little bit not yourself. It's a great number for that. Contra Costa County has a specific 24-hour line. That's actually looks like both of these are for Contra Costa. So those are really helpful because those can specifically help you access particular resources. So behavioral health access, it can be really hard just to find a therapist, find a counselor, find mental health or substance use treatment. So these are numbers that you could call to help connect you to ongoing care, because it can be really hard to just figure out what resources do I have access to, what am I able to use. So all those numbers, I would encourage you, again, if you're not sure where to turn, those can be great places to start because there are people who will help connect you and who can help you kind of ground and stabilize in the moment as well.
Okay, we're actually ahead of schedule a little bit. I was going to pause again and see if anyone had questions or feedback. And if not, I am going to ask you to think about all the things we discussed today and write down one thing from this presentation that you think you wanted to try or that you want to take home with you. A couple suggestions there, but it could be anything. It could be one of those resources we mentioned or a counselor, DSS services, whatever resonated for you. Someone said sleeping better. You're here. Someone else said they like the breathing technique. Yeah, that's a good one. Reducing screen time. Meditation and reaching out to a counselor if you're feeling overwhelmed. Good. Anyone else? Better time management. Okay, good. And then lastly, I've thrown up my contact information here, my email and my direct line, if you wanted to talk to me particularly about DSS services. Jake, I don't know if you have any contact info you wanted to put up in the chat.
Yeah, I'll put in the referral link. I can't use it because I'm not a DVC student, but I'm pretty sure it's the referral link that lets you sign up for College Wellness for those 10 sessions of counseling. So you can use that if you'd like to sign up for that.
Okay, and then I see that Max put up a link to a survey so that you can give us some feedback about what you liked or didn't like about this presentation. Please do take it. It is helpful to us moving forward when we do it again. And you are all officially dismissed and free to go. But if you wanted to talk privately or say something that you didn't want